the government is in the end of its days, and people want an election campaign, and there is a real threat here that we may have an election before Christmas.
It was a busy day in Parliament today. Speculation of a Christmas election, another confidence vote, and new attacks on the Liberal government are making for a fiery start to October, where we count down the days to the withdrawal of the Bloc's support.
Let's take a look.
What's your take, JD? Is this what it's going to be like from now on, or was it an outlier?
This is the flavor of the month that will last until the election is called, I think, because the tempers have been flaring. And I think the Conservative, for one, they smell blood on the floor, and so they want to take advantage of it by forcing an election. And the Bloc Québécois is also becoming to that same conclusion quietly. The only remaining outstanding party is the NDP, what we'll do, and there's a actual non-confidence motion that is supported by the Conservative and the Bloc Québécois. That's going to be up to the NDP, either to force an election or to save the government. And that's, I think, until then, we will see the nature of the speech as, angry as we have seen this week. And it feels to me like we've been in session for 5 months in a row non-stop because of the intensity of the debate.
Okay, so first off, that's not our audio problem.
For once.
For once. It seems to be the result of them firing their audio guy. I don't know, I'm just speculating, but their audio sounds terrible. They need to fire their new audio guy, because who the heck uploaded that to YouTube saying, yeah, oh, that sounds good. Anyway, very interesting start to that conversation, where the expert in how the Bloc is going to be operating is basically saying, oh yeah, the Bloc, smell blood in the water just as much as the Conservatives, and it's just going to depend on the NDP. And as he said, and it's correct, the question is going to be, what will the NDP do when it's the Conservatives and the Bloc voting non-confidence against the Trudeau government? They're going to be pushed right back into that corner, and Jagmeet is going to have to answer that question once and for all. Did you rip up the agreement?
It also feels pretty genuine, Sherelle, on everybody's part. And in particular, I mean, we spent many times gathered together talking about how many hits the Liberals are taking. It's the one arena where I have the sense that they feel actually the opposite of that, like they feel a bit emboldened.
Yeah, they absolutely feel emboldened because they know that it works. They're in there they're making their clips for social media. That's essentially what they want to get out of this. The opposition is trying to embarrass the government, as question period has pretty much always been about. But when you add social media onto that, and that's what works, that's what connects, that's what people want, or they feel that people want to see. And then you also have now, because as Joel-Denis said, that blood in the water, everybody's getting that little bit feistier, that little bit itchier. And the Liberals are also fighting back in a way that we haven't really seen them do before, because now it becomes more apparent to them that they have to say, okay, well, here's the contrast. This is what you have to pick from. It's us or it's them. Are these the people? And by these people, I mean the Conservatives. Are these the people that you want representing you? So they're not going to let things slide where they might have before.
Yeah, that's...
Okay. I don't know if she's trying to make it seem like the Liberals are effective at what they're doing, but if she is, I don't think there's really many people outside of staunch Liberal supporters that may agree with your assessment.
Well, she was from the Hill Times, wasn't she?
She is.
Which media organization owns the Hill Times? I doubt it's Post Media.
I'm not sure.
Okay, just because Post Media is generally right-leaning, while most of the others are left-leaning.
Really good point. Bob, you've covered a few of these moments in time where we're on the potential precipice of an election. How does this one measure up?
Well, it's still fairly tame compared to back in Pierre Trudeau's days. Yeah. There was a 2-week bell ringing session where Parliament was shut down. During the constitutional debate, the Conservative MPs stormed the speaker's chair with their fist waving at the speaker. And during Mulroney's year, the Rat Pack, Sheila Copps, who was part part of the Rat Pack, jumped over a table in the House of Commons committee to go after St. Clair Stevens. So it's bad, but not anywhere like it was. But if it starts to get like this, and by the way, it's very likely could get like this because the government is in the end of its days, and people want an election campaign. And there's a real threat here that we may have an election before Christmas.
Oh, you may win your bet after all.
I may win my bet after all. And it's very possible. And I found it interesting that I think we were probably one of the first, teams to be saying that we could be looking at a Christmas election. And
I know I'm out of the game. I thought for sure it was March. It made sense in March/April. We'll call it spring. This past spring that's already gone because of the boundary change. So I mean, I already lost this one.
Well, and we're not going to show you this whole chat, but what they go on to talk about is the fact that the pharmacare bill may be passed in the Senate soon, may receive royal assent soon. So once that's done, they have zero, and I mean zero reason to keep this government in power. If you believe Jagmeet, and if Jagmeet wants his supporters to believe that he is serious, and he has torn up the agreement, and Trudeau does need to go. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens once pharmacare receives royal assent, and once the Bloc join the Conservatives. Jagmeet's going to have nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. But let's get to what happened today at Question Period.
Carbon tax Carney became conflict of interest Carney when the Prime Minister named him to be effectively the phantom finance minister to advise on economic policy while he presides over a massive multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation that sought 10 billion Canadian tax dollars to take over our pension system. He's got a $2 billion loan for a friend, and now we learn that the Economic Task Force he heads up has only one person. Isn't he a walking, talking conflict of interest?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Absolutely, Carney is a walking, talking conflict of interest because he doesn't have to answer to the Canadian people. He's doing the work of an elected official, but isn't actually an elected official and therefore doesn't have to listen to our ethics laws.
Well, and this is the stupid thing. So he's heading up this economic task force consisting of him, and he is representing a company that is saying, hey, we want $10 billion to manage the Canada Pension Fund. So, yeah, and that's my recommendation to you, Mr. Prime Minister. Give my company that, this is...
huge ethics breach.
This is Looney Town. Absolute Looney Town. So, yeah, this is complete conflict of interest. There's no debate. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The problem is Ethics Commissioner doesn't have jurisdiction here. Why? Because Mark Carney is not a public servant. That's the issue here. And he's not appointed. He was just given a ridiculously made-up job, just like David Johnson was given a made-up job and paid a bunch of money to do it.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are glad to get economic advice from smart former Canadian central bankers like Mark Carney and like Steve Pelosi, who is doing some great work advising us on how to encourage Canadian pension funds to invest more in Canada. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, on that side of the House, they get their foreign policy advice from Elon Musk and from Tucker Carlson. They should be ashamed of themselves. The people of Ukraine certainly know what's going on.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What is she on about? Up until recently, the Liberal Party has been getting their financial advice and financial acumen from a journalist.
And historian. Yeah. And I love the false equivalency here. Big fallacy. So you are literally paying somebody who works for a global multinational investment firm who wants to actually be paid to take over the Canada Pension Plan, and you're paying them money to give you the advice that tells you to give them that plan so that they can make more money. Meanwhile, you are trying to say that two guys that don't work for the Canadian government, don't work for the Conservative Party, don't have really any relation to the Conservative Party, that they're the ones that are advising the Conservative Party on foreign policy. Wow. That's a new low for you, Freeland.
But this is extremely concerning where a non-appointed official, if you can even call Mark Carney an official, but the Liberal Party of Canada has hired this person. He's on their payroll, and he's the one advising them as the government to give his company $10 billion to manage the Canada pension plan. Like, he's advising the government for the government to give his company $10 billion. Like, this is SCTC all over again, but even bigger because it's $10 billion this time.
Well, and they're not even trying to hide it. That's the infuriating
this
thing.
is what Canadians should be upset about, because they have like just skirted the ethics laws with absolute precision, and Canadians should be upset about this. This is our money that Mark Carney is suggesting that the government give to his company. Like, this is a joke. This is beyond a joke. This is infuriating.
Madam Speaker, today the Premier, Mr. Speaker, the very courageous and common sense Premier of New Brunswick launched a renewed lawsuit against the quadrupling carbon tax. He's pointing out that this carbon tax will force the layoff of nurses, doctors, and teachers because of the extra cost it imposes on operating schools and hospitals. Instead of requiring courts to decide on the quadrupling carbon tax, why won't the Prime Minister let the people decide in a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
I am so glad that the Leader of the Opposition gives me an opportunity to talk about the price on pollution, because we made a great announcement just a few minutes ago. And that is that small businesses in the province of New Brunswick that he was talking about that have 499 employees are going to get rebates of $43,413. In the province of Ontario that we both represent, a business of 499 employees can get a rebate of nearly $300,000. They're going to get that money directly in their bank accounts by the end of the year.
Are they?
I am so glad Chrystia Freeland brought this up. A missed opportunity. Small business advocate says carbon tax rebate in budget still a net drain for companies. Small business owners still waiting on Trudeau Liberals for carbon tax rebates. Canada's Prime Minister has acknowledged that increases to the carbon tax rebates have to come from somewhere, and it seems that small business owners are the ones funding the increases. The carbon tax goes up as of April 1st, affecting gas prices at the pumps, natural gas, and propane.
And it's going up this April 1st as well.
Well, and here's the thing. They've since they've implemented the carbon tax on everybody, they've barely paid out any small businesses their carbon tax rebate. So what happened to this revenue neutral model, Freeland? What happened to it? And you're standing up there saying that, hey, I have great news, everybody. We're deciding to announce that we're going to start paying some small businesses their carbon tax rebate.
Okay, well, that's all well and good, but what about the small businesses that have gone under because they could not afford the increase in carbon tax? And
well,
so
I guess
they're no
they don't
longer
get it.
businesses, right? Like, it happened to a family member of mine where they were running a furnace for their business, and the cost of fueling that furnace was so high, they had to close down this past March. Now, if they're saying, oh, well, businesses will get a rebate by the end of the year, the business doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. It's closed down. Now what?
Well, my guess is as a result of all of these businesses closing down, now they actually have enough money to start paying off some of these businesses their carbon tax rebate. And isn't that disgusting?
It is disgusting because it's not right. What happened to the people who have had to close up shop?
And what happened to the revenue neutrality of this? Basically what they're doing is they're taking the money that they would have had to pay all of these businesses that have now closed, and they're paying it to the businesses that are still open.
Well, and that's just it. It's not revenue neutral, and it never was. It has a price tag of $200 million to administer. How is that revenue neutral?
Well, and if you need any more proof, it's the fact that they've waited, 8 years to be able to start paying back these businesses their money. There's no more discussion, folks. Everyone understands what this is. It's a fraud on the Canadian taxpayer.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Almost a year ago today, Tehran-backed terrorists unleashed the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Ever since, they've continued to push this genocidal aim. Today, hundreds of rockets came from Tehran towards Israel, forcing millions into shelter. 2 terrorist attacks carried out. This Prime Minister has talked out of both sides of his mouth, saying one thing to one group, the opposite to another. Will the Prime Minister state clearly that Israel has the right to defend itself by defeating Hezbollah, Hamas, the IRGC, and all the other terrorists?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we all seen the attacks by Iran against Israel today, and of course we condemn them unequivocally. These attacks from Iran will only serve to further escalate the region, and therefore that is why I've been in contact with my Israeli counterpart this morning, and I've been in contact with many G7 foreign ministers as well as Arab countries' foreign ministers. This is a very dangerous time for the Middle East, and we need to make sure that this war stops. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is why Justin Trudeau's Liberals have lost a whole bunch of support from people in the Palestinian supporting community, and they've lost a whole bunch of support from people in the Jewish and Israeli supporting community, because you cannot talk out of both sides of your mouth and expect both sides to actually support you. This is the big problem that he's seeing. This is why you saw all of these volunteers just bail on the campaign in LaSalle and Verdun. That's what happened. And this is why you're seeing a whole bunch of Jewish fundraisers not giving money to the Liberal Party, because they've said, we're done. So this is the issue. He's trying to placate everybody, and in the end, he's going to end up with no support whatsoever. So if we go back to that original discussion, blood is definitely in the water, folks, because you have the Conservatives smelling it, you now have the Bloc smelling it, and as soon as the NDP wake up and realize that this is going to be Trudeau at his absolute weakest, and if Trudeau is smart, if the Liberal Party is smart, they will prorogue Parliament at some point and get a new leader. So Jagmeet Singh has to strike while the iron is hot, while the Liberals are at their weakest, so he can actually take advantage and not completely humiliate his party.
Well, that's just it. The longer the NDP hang on, the worse their polling numbers are going to get, and the worse the situation will be for them on election day.
So if I'm Trudeau, I'm calling the Senate and asking them to delay talking about pharmacare until after Christmas. But depends if he has that influence now or not.
The longer that the NDP hang on, the worse their polling numbers are going to be, and it's all going to be for nothing, because if their fear is that they're going to lose pharmacare, they'll either lose it now and maybe save some seats, or they're going to lose it after the election if the Conservatives do want to take it out. I don't know for sure that they do, but if that's the fear of the NDP, hanging on right now is not going to stop that when the Conservatives form a majority.
Well, one thing's going to be fun for sure is watching the NDP squirm as they have to answer these questions over the next, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks as to why they are continuing to support Justin Trudeau, especially if pharmacare does pass. They have no other reason to stick in this government any longer. So buckle up, folks, because Santa's coming to town.